Meanwhile, on the comic box, Marvel lays its cards on the table, another hero falls, and libaries. Ba-da-bow, bop-doo, da-da-da-ba-doo, wow, da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-dum, comics. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Comic Box, part of the Geek to Geek podcast network. I'm Rob, your friendly neighborhood comic geek, and I am solo this week. The last 2 weeks were a lot of fun. I really liked having a co-host, but it can't happen every week, especially when I don't know when I'm actually going to record. So let's jump straight into some news. I'm actually going to start with DC animated movie news, The Killing Joke. The animated film I had announced previously. Well, I guess announced, right? Like, I got the news from somewhere else, but I told you guys, so I was announcing it. Anyway, they're doing a one-night premiere in theaters before it goes out digitally on Monday, July 25th. So that's hosted by Fathom Events. They're a company that does this in, small areas, like they put the original Ghostbusters back into major theaters, that kind of thing. And so because of the response, the outrageous, outlandish, ridiculous, amazing response to The Killing Joke coming into theaters, they're adding more than 300 additional theater locations. So there is now 1,000 cinemas out there. It's the biggest rollout of anything that Fathom has done before. So I will leave a link in the show notes if you have not had a chance to go and get your ticket and you'd like to go see The Killing Joke on the big screen. This is your best chance to go out and do that before the tickets sell out once again. Switching gears over to Marvel comic book news. They have, as I said in the intro, laid their cards on the table. We know what titles are going to be around post-Civil War II as they dig into this Marvel Now thing. So I'm going to read through them pretty quickly, just so that if you don't follow the news and you are a certain, Marvel Comics fan. The first list is the list of continuing titles, and then I will get into the new titles that are launching come the fall. So, for continuing stuff, Black Panther, Black Widow, Captain America Sam Wilson, Captain America Steve Rogers, Daredevil, Deadpool, Deadpool and the Mercs for Money, Doctor Strange, Guardians of the Galaxy, The Totally Awesome Hulk, The Mighty Thor, Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, Moon Knight, Miss Marvel, Patsy Walker, a.k.a. Hellcat, Power Man and Iron Fist, Punisher, Silk, Silver Surfer, Spider-Gwen, Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2099, Spider-Woman, lots of spiders there, Squadron Supreme, Thunderbolts, Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, The Unbelievable Gwenpool, Uncanny Avengers, and Uncanny Inhumans. So if you're currently reading one of those titles and you're worried that it might, get scrapped in the wake of Civil War II, you're safe. Those are going to keep going. So now here are the brand new titles, or the ones that are going to receive a relaunch or a renumbering and go back to number one. So these are the ones that would be a jumping on point if any of these sound interesting to you. So we have Amazing Spider-Man, Avengers, Avengers Point One, Bullseye, Cage with an exclamation point, which is this book that's been in the works apparently for years by the creator of Samurai Jack. So a lot of people are looking forward to that one. I had no idea that was a thing, that had been in the works for so long, but that is finally coming out. Captain Marvel, Champions, which is that team book that Beej was super excited about. The Clone Conspiracy, which is a book that Liam probably isn't excited about. I believe that gets back into Spider-Clone territory, so apologies to everyone. Death of X, which we'll talk about in a bit. Doctor Strange, Sorcerers Supreme, so he's getting his own team. Fool Killer, Gamera, Great Lakes Avengers, Hawkeye, Infamous Iron Man, Invincible Iron Man, Iron Fist, Jessica Jones, Kingpin, Mosaic, Nova, Occupy Avengers, Prowler, Rocket Raccoon, Slapstick, Solo, Star-Lord, Thanos, U.S. Avengers, Ultimates 2, The Unstoppable Wasp, The Unworthy Thor, and Venom. So I'm going to dig very briefly into a couple highlights on that list. First, you have Hawkeye. The cover for Hawkeye shows the female version, the Young Avengers. I guess there are no Young Avengers anymore. But that version, the Kate Bishop version of Hawkeye. And I will get to that in a bit as well as to why that's happening. As far as Iron Man, so there's two different ones. Invincible Iron Man, which is the Riri, is it Williams? The black female teenage tech prodigy that is taking on the Iron Man role. But then there's Infamous Iron Man with a second Iron Man, and that cover shows us that it is Dr. Doom posing as Iron Man. So I guess that means we're going to have 2 Iron Men running around. Jessica Jones is a big deal because it's the original creative team from the Alias comic, Brian Michael Bendis, back in the day, the comic that was the basis for the Jessica Jones Netflix show. Really, I guess it's the first time that Jessica Jones has had her own self-titled one. There was a comic called The Pulse, which sort of continued her story after Alias, but still very cool that this is coming back. It's going to be one to pick up. Nova sounds like they are teasing the return of the original Nova, which is, get angry at me if I'm wrong here, Richard Rider. So not the current Sam, oh man, I'm just blanking on character names, but the current younger Nova. It seems like they're teasing the return of the original one. Occupy Avengers shows Hawkeye in the front of a crowd of people, so I imagine that they're going to be standing up to whatever is the case post Civil War II. Obviously, it sounds like there's going to be something to get upset about. And then the Unworthy Thor is going to be following Thor that most people know, who now calls himself the Odin son, who is missing an arm, had it replaced by an arm that looks like the Asgardian Destroyer, and then isn't able to lift the hammer, which is why he's unworthy, gave away the name of Thor, gave it to the female Thor, and was decided just to call himself the Odin son. He's been carrying around his old axe, but in the cover here, it looks like he's going after the hammer of the Ultimate Thor, which at the end of Secret Wars, when they combined all of these different universes and stuff, the Ultimate Universe, the regular 616 universe, part of the fallout of that is you saw the hammer of the Ultimate Thor land in the normal 616 universe. So now let's back up a bit and talk Death of X, because if you were listening carefully, there was something that was definitely missing from that line of books. No X-Men titles. 0. No X-Men, Uncanny X-Men, no X-Force, no, X-Factor, no X-Men books whatsoever, beyond a story called The Death of X, which is I don't know what you would call it, a period book isn't right, but it tells a story before right now in comics continuity. It talks about what happened immediately after Secret Wars that led to, spoilers, 3, 2, 1, the death of Scott Summers. So I had said in a previous episode that the past Cyclops, who is around, he's going to be in Champions, that young Cyclops is in the present, and I assumed that just meant there were 2 of them. Apparently, our normal modern-day Cyclops died. I don't know when that happened. I guess I wasn't paying attention, and maybe nobody else was. Otherwise, that might have been larger news. But we have no X-Men comics, so it seems pretty apparent that that's Marvel again saying, oh, we don't own Fantastic Four, no more Fantastic Four. Oh, we don't know X-Men? Surprise everybody, no more X-Men books. It seems like Marvel is really cracking down on anybody that's not making movies with them, because you'll notice 4 Spider-Man books, or Spider-related, I guess, Spider-Woman, which isn't super Spider-Man related if you know the lore. I'm rambling here. Point being, no X-Men books. But, that said, Fox is putting out a second X-Men related show. There was one in the works for a long time called Hellfire or something that would be based around, I believe, the Hellfire Club. Scrapped. Now what they're working on is an untitled show that, if I remember correctly, it features parents who have a child who they find out is a mutant, and then they have to travel into like a mutant underground in order to protect their child from the government or whoever is coming after their kid. Now, this is separate from the FX show Legion, which tells a story about a mutant with multiple personality syndrome, where each personality has a different mutant ability. So we're getting some X-Men television stuff, and obviously there's still the movies that I imagine they're going to want to continue putting out, but I wouldn't expect to see, whatever this new show is, I wouldn't expect to see any of your favorite X-Men show up because, let's face it, it's television, and they're not going to be able to afford any of the big-name actors. But, maybe you'll see some side characters. I'd love to see something like that for the X-Men universe. So, no X-Men comics, but X-Men TV show. Looks like you might be getting 2 of those. The last thing I want to mention, I just pushed it to the end there. We're back in Marvel comic book news here. But Civil War II #3 came out. And so big spoilers here. That's why I put it to the end. So another character has died, and that is 3, 2, and 1, the Hulk. Or rather, Bruce Banner. Because we have Amadeus Cho as the totally awesome Hulk, but in this comic, Hawkeye kills Bruce Banner, shoots him with an arrow that has a tip on it that gamma something or other. Point being, it can kill the Hulk. Bruce Banner actually makes this tip for the arrow, gives it to Hawkeye, and says, if I start hulking out again, if it looks like I'm going to cause damage, if it looks like I'm going to hurt people, I want you to put me down. And then this whole Civil War II storyline is that there's an Inhuman with the ability to potentially see the future or a potential future. And they saw a future where the Hulk kills many, many people. So they show up and Hawkeye's sort of drifts off to the back, thinks he sees Bruce Banner start to hulk out, thinks he sees a glint of green in his eyes, and immediately lets loose the arrow to kill Bruce Banner. So that's our big thing. So I think it's very interesting that Marvel seems to be moving into this period where everybody is a different character. All their big popular characters, rather, have different alter egos. Maybe that's the best way to put it. Almost feels like DC in the 90s where you were getting, all sorts of different people, because we've seen Batman replace, Green Lantern replace. You had Wally West as the Flash since the 80s. There were times where Wonder Woman was replaced. Superman died and had a bunch of people, replacing him or trying to step into his shoes. So it's something we've seen in comics before where they sort of take out the entire pantheon of their books and replace them with familiar names but new characters. It'll be interesting to see where it goes from here, and more importantly, the fan reaction. And that's it for news. All right, comic reviews for this week. It was a short week for me as far as comics. I didn't get to all the trades I wanted to, but I have a couple regular comics. First up is Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps. For my part, it's really nice to see Ethan Van Sciver, I believe I'm pronouncing that right, back on pencils, because with him, the way he draws the Green Lantern Corps is he never draws muscle tone or definition on the black parts of their costume, and it's just a thing for me. I love that negative space. I love the way he does that. It gives it a very powerful look, sort of more like almost a space uniform you could imagine, because you're not seeing, all their side ab lines or whatever. So in this comic, we have Hal Jordan, who's been using the predecessor to a Green Lantern ring for the last arc of the Green Lantern comic, where he's using this glove that's much more powerful but harder to control. And at the end of that arc, he starts sort of fading into just this green being, like a construct himself, fading into the emotional spectrum. So what he does is take all of that willpower that he himself has become, and he pushes it and forges it into a new power ring for himself. I don't know what this ring is powered by, the will he had in himself. As far as I know, the central power battery is now on Mogo, which, as of this comic, is still traveling from the previous universe back to our own, or trying to get back to our own. So I don't know. I hope we get some answers there, just as a Green Lantern nut, and I like to know all the nitty-gritty details. But the weird timing is that in the different panels of where the other Green Lanterns are, it shows Simon Baz still being stuck in the previous universe, but we've had 3 issues of Green Lanterns, counting the Rebirth issue. The actual issue 3 doesn't come out till next week. And in that one, we see Hal Jordan, I believe as Green Lantern, assigning them as the Green Lanterns of Earth, Simon Baz and Jessica Cruz. So it's kind of odd to see all the stories hopping around, so I guess this is filling in the gap prior to Green Lanterns. But beyond that, we get a parallel story with Sinestro, and he has now moved Warworld to where Oa used to be. So now Sinestro and his Corps are located at the center of the universe where the Green Lantern Corps used to be. And so now it looks like we're going to get back to this Hal versus Sinestro sort of story, which usually makes for a really good read. Other comic that I read this week was Wonder Woman #2. This was Year 1, Part 1. Which it shows Diana not really growing up. She's already sort of an adult, but sort of existing on Paradise Island. And again, we get a parallel story, this time between her and Steve Trevor, as he goes through training with his buddy in the Air Force. And then an interesting thing is we seem to get a hint, I would take it as they're pretty much blatantly saying it, that Diana was having whatever sort of relationships with other Amazons on Paradise Island, which totally makes sense, but as far as I'm aware, hasn't really been touched on or mentioned except for Grant Morrison's Earth 1 Wonder Woman. So it's kind of neat for them to bring that in there and bring in another level to Diana's character. And then, of course, the comic book ends with sort of the beginning of the Wonder Woman legend, which is Steve Trevor crashing. In this case, he was part of the Air Force, and his plane crashes, killing everyone, including his buddy that we saw him be so close to throughout the issue. He is the only one left alive and is found by Diana and a series of Amazons. It looks like the next issue, number 3, which comes out in 2 weeks, is going to move back to Wonder Woman 1 and continue that storyline, which is called Lies, and then in number 4, jump back to year 1. I'm thinking maybe Greg Rucka, who's the writer on this one, I think he's going to be just doing this jumping back and forth thing with this storyline, which then means that at the end of year 1, I imagine we're going to see whatever this truth is about Diana's origin that we don't know yet. Also, just a quick note as far as Greg Rucka and Wonder Woman. I've said before that he did a previous run, I never read it, but he did a previous run on Wonder Woman, which they just republished in a new trade. So if you want, you can go out and get that and see what his old run looked like. Or, and this is my suggestion, you can go and find the original trade. So I believe the original run probably had a slightly different title. Maybe they just had volume 5 or something, where I believe this new one says Wonder Woman by Greg Rucka is the name of this new trade. But as far as I'm aware, it's a republished with just a different title on the front of it. It's the exact same comics. And I was digging around online, and this new one is, I think, $30 or $25 or something, where the other one I was able to find online for like $9, just because it's an older trade. So take that as you will, but if you want to go back and read the Greg Rucka run in trade format, you can either listen to the topic of the week this week, libaries, or if you want to go and pick up that trade, I would suggest going for the original run, or excuse me, the original printing of that trade. Bow, bow, ba-dow, bow. Ba-da-bow, ba-da-bow, da-ba-da-da-da-da, poll list. Here's what I'm looking for next week. It's another slow week. I have Buffy Season 10, number 29, and Green Lanterns, number 3. And that's it. I have several trades that I want to catch up on. I started reading this really good one, and I don't know that it's really a trade so much as a graphic novel, and I didn't write down the name of it because I'm pulling this off the top of my head here. But it's an autobiography by Stan Lee in comic book form. And I've really enjoyed it so far. There's some really, high moments, low moments. It does very much feel like Stan Lee telling it. You can totally hear his voice in your head. So I look forward to finishing that. I have the Wayward trades that I have to go find somewhere that was recommended to me by Void. And then I got a poll list recommendation from Twitter, which, thank you, Twitter, and thank you, listeners, for giving me a recommendation. Keep sending them. Seriously, I love talking to you guys online. So I hope I'm going to pronounce this correctly. Chris Fruin, who you can find at Fruin Juice, so that's Fruin Juice on Twitter, suggested Planetary by Warren Ellis. Now, I have the Planetary/JLA crossover trade, which I liked okay. I wasn't really in love with it. It wasn't enough for me to say, I have to go read Planetary now. But hey, I will take recommendations. So, and again, we'll talk about it when I get to the topic of the week, but I have yet to go and really dig into what my library has. So I'm going to go see if they have Wayward and see if they have Planetary, and trying to dig into some of those suggestions. So if you guys have suggestions for the poll list, or if you guys have archive suggestions for older trades that you think I should go and check out so I can talk about it here on the podcast, send them my way. I'll give you the contact details at the end of the show. Otherwise, they're always in the show notes. Yeah, send them my way. Okay, so the archives. I have Lazarus, just because all things Greg Rucka, and I've mentioned Lazarus before. Think of it as a post-apocalyptic Game of Thrones. So big wars happened, and these powerful families now rule the world, and each one of them has a soldier known as a Lazarus. Think sort of like a bodyguard, a captain of the King's Guard, if you will, in Game of Thrones speak. And the story of Lazarus follows the daughter of one family, a woman named Forever, who can apparently come back after being killed or sustain, incredible serious injury, something that would normally kill a person. She's able to come back and heal. Other families, Lazari, perhaps, have bionic parts in them, or each of these families goes about doing it a different way to build sort of this ultimate soldier who can serve as, in this case, Forever sort of leads their military unit of the family. But I believe, and I'm pulling this from memory because I've read it before, but I just ordered all of the trades because it's totally worth it for me to have them all on my shelf, where you sort of send your Lazarus out to fight the other family's Lazarus in order to solve some of those disputes rather than killing your people. Again, yes, it's by Greg Rucka. We like him here on the Comic Box. And I'm really looking forward to reading those trades again once they come in. And then the other trade, it's Archives, and I mentioned it last week as well. I also went ahead and got the Book 1 trade for Scarlet, which really, and I don't want to get into it, this is not the place to be political, but I live in Minnesota, and just as far as prophetic books go, I was actually considering making that my topic of the week, but decided I wanted to stick with libraries so I can get that off the table because I've been talking about doing that as my topic for so long. But there's several comics that I've read in my time that talked about things that could happen and then do happen, or in some form. Obviously, we haven't seen anything as extreme as Scarlet, but it's a book where a woman feels that she and her boyfriend in particular are wronged by police, framed by police, and then eventually where the story leads is she leads a team that goes out to kill what they believe to be corrupt police officers. So, sorry, totally brought everything down. Like I said, this is not a political soapbox. I'm not here to talk about any of my personal opinions on the matter at all. Killing people's bad, okay? That's as far as I guess I'll go on the comic box. Let's be nice to one another, okay? Love better than hate. All right, let's move on to the topic of the week. Bow, ba-da, bow, ba-da, ba, ba-doom, down, 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 ba-doom. It almost feels bad to be upbeat with that after what I was just talking about. But anyway, topic of the week. So, libraries. You's got a library near you. Go to your library. I talked about it in my podcast with Professor Beej, where I grew up reading comics at the library. They just had a grocery store basket in the corner of the kids section with just a ton of old, torn up comic books. And that's where my brothers and I used to dig in. And that's where we got a lot of our random issues, of comics, which is always fun, is just picking up a random issue, because then you have so many questions and it gets you excited. I know that some libraries probably still have some loose issues. Most of them are now moving on to trades. It's nice when sometimes they even have hardcovers, so you know that, you're not going to get something really torn up. But go check it out. Go see what your library has. And, if they don't have something you really want, most libraries do an interlibrary loan where you could go on their website and find a book that you want to read that another library has. You'll have to wait a little bit, but that's the benefit of having it in a trade. It's already there. It's already out. You're not waiting for individual issues to come out to finish the story. So please go and do that. Take advantage of your local library. Notable things that I have read from the library was the original Lucifer run. I believe I bought, on a sale at my local comic store, I think I bought the first trade or maybe the first two and liked it, but didn't know if it was worthwhile for me to keep spending money to buy a comic when I didn't know how good it was going to get or if it was going to go off the rails, and my local library happened to have it. So I was able to read the entirety of the Lucifer run, which I am a big fan of, as well as Brian Azzarello's Wonder Woman run. That first run of the New 52 had read really good things about it. I had gone to the library to pick up the next volume of Lucifer, saw Wonder Woman there, picked it up, started reading, didn't stop until I finished that whole run. I really can't say enough good things about it. It's free. Go and read comic books for free. Go and pick up a trade. You can take it with you as you go out hunting for your Pokemans. The more people go to their libraries requesting comics and asking for comics, the more comics they're going to get in. And I'm not sure. I'm sure you can probably actually even go in and request and say, hey, I would like to read this. You don't have it. Can you order it, please? And they just might do it for you. If you don't have a lot of money, you don't want to get a bunch of digital comics, no problem. Your library is there for you. Bow, 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 ba-da, bow, ba-da, ba, ba-doo, down, down, ba-doo, da, ba-doo, ba-doo, down, do, do. And that's it for this week, everybody. Hopefully this one will edit down, won't be too long. We'll actually get a shorter episode for once. Reminders, as always, if you like this show, let me know and let other people know. If you're on iTunes listening to this, please leave me a star rating, leave me a review. It not only lets me know what you think of the show, but it shares it with other people. Getting me higher on iTunes isn't going to make me any money. It's just going to expand that audience and give me more people I can talk to about comic books, which I love. And of course, don't forget, listen to the rest of the Geek to Geek podcast network. You can go to geektogeekcast.net and sign up for updates on all of our great Geek to Geek podcast shows. As far as contacting me directly, I want to hear your archive suggestions. And I love just talking to people. I mean, you'll note if you go and check out my Twitter feed, anytime somebody brings up comic books or if it's somebody who's listened to the show, I'm going to get back to you. I don't ignore people when they send me messages. I just love to talk comics. I am on Twitter at Noby. That is at KNOWBY. Or you can email me at thecomicboxpodcast@gmail.com. And I have yet to receive a single email. Few people talking to me on Twitter, which is great. But if you have something really long form, you really just got to get something off your chest. Tell me how much you love Liam and how much you want to hear his beard scratch against the microphone, or how much you hate me and my opinions and wish I would cover that one particular comic that you love that I don't talk about. Send me an email. I'd love to hear from you guys. I really would. So that is it for this week. I'm closing the comic box, and I will catch you guys next time. Dap doo ba doo dot dot comic box dabba dap ba doo ba bow dot dabba doo ba doo doo ba da ba doo ba da ba doo ba da ba doom don chicka. And I know I didn't mention it in the show, but Beej is doing mouth noises. He did it on his podcast and the Geek to Geek cast. I think I've gotten him addicted, and you know what? I'm okay with that.